I'm Pastor Jim. I'm going to do a quick version of Speaking of, and this will go out soon. Right now, you could be watching this anytime, but the making of this was at a very specific time, and that is in the late stages of COVID 19 in Massachusetts. Right now, it's the 22nd of May. And just earlier this week, Governor Baker has announced that the first round of openings are going to happen in our economy, meaning that some businesses are going to be allowed. And to my shock, and to the shock of many other people, churches were included in round one. Um, Likely, the answer of why, even though structurally we bear more resemblance to things that are open in stage four, like theaters, or maybe earlier things like restaurants. But uh, the answer of why we get that privilege probably has more to do with the legal setup, I've been told by my lawyer friends, of the Constitution and its real strong preference for religious rights not to be infringed upon. And so I think out of an abundance of caution of that, Governor Baker and probably other governors are erring on the side of allowing churches to move at their desired pace. Our desired pace is not to cause a bunch of people to get infections through COVID 19. So that means that some of the stuff that we've been contending with in this season of absence, where we haven't been together, we're going to continue to have to think about. In fact, even if we were opening tomorrow, and even when we do open in months from now, fully, it's not going to look like the world that it was when we were still open before. It's a different setup now. In all likelihood, one of the things that's going to be different is that our online presence, our virtual presence, is going to become more central to some people's experience of church. And that some people category is going to be a growing category. In all likelihood, this has been a sobering moment for us as a society as we contend with what a global pandemic can do. And it's been an awakening moment about how it is we relate to one another. For the church especially, we have thought for a long time and tried to wrestle with the idea of what does it mean for us to be present with one another. We believe in God's presence. We believe in God's presence, especially when we are present with one another. We have set up different systems for how to encourage people to be present in their lives with one another, present in church. This includes things like song or meditation. Um, this includes words that are spoken and actions and movements of the body. And all of those things together are part of let's call it a technology that's designed to bring people into the presence of God, into the presence of one another, so they can experience the promise, the gift that comes from God. That promise is abundant life. Uh, Abundant life doesn't mean very much if you're not present to fully hear what that is. And so that's what the technology, that's what the systems, that's what the culture of the church is built around. Okay, now take all of that accoutrement, take all of that technology, culture, system, and strip it away and put it into a different setup altogether, a virtual one. Now, how do you achieve the same ends? How do you get people to be in the moment, to really experience what's going on, and then lead them on that same pathway, that same journey? Well, one of the tough things, and we'll hear about this a little bit in my sermon on Sunday. Probably you're watching this after my sermon came out on Sunday, but if you're not, this will prefigure a little bit of it. One of the things that we have to recognize is that the church has been sometimes a leader in technologies. Um, The gospel itself is a piece of technology. It was a genre of literature never before seen. It is a combination of a travelogue with sometimes with the preface of a letter, with a certain goal in mind of trying to achieve belief in the lives of people, all framed around a narrative. It's a totally unique setup. Even before the Gospels, the idea of the what we would call the Old Testament or the Torah also is replete with innovation and with technology. And some of that technology, though, was things that the ancient Jewish people picked up from their neighbors, associated, and made their own. So cuneiform writing, papyrus scrolls, all these were things that other peoples developed, but quickly became part of the technology used and the system and the culture used for the worship of the one true God, of Adonai. Uh, Likewise, in the Lutheran tradition, it was a happy coincidence that the Gutenberg printing press came out in the same time and area as Luther's writings. In many ways, you could see him just becoming another Jan Hus, who is ultimately killed and his people stamped out by the Catholic Church. Although that some of those writings continue on and inspire people like Luther, but that would have likely been the result of the Lutheran Reformation had it not been for the easy dissemination of information that came from the Gutenberg printing press. And as a result, history was changed, and a defense of grace, as we Lutherans like to think that we centralize in our faith, uh, lived on. So, what I am proposing in this is that this new era, this new technological era, is one in which we have to contend with the fact that we were not the originators of the technology that we will be the users of, that we will have to incorporate. So, some people have in the church have gone really far and are quite the futurists when it comes to this. Uh, I read an article that cited the idea of Exreality. Exreality is the concept that there really is no fundamental distinction between being physically present and being virtually present anymore, and we have to totally do without that distinction. We are already in a time where even when people are physically present with you, they're living a virtual life. They're probably still on their phones and they're still going through Facebook. A big portion of even what's in their head is information that they've received virtually, not received from you standing right in front of them. And indeed, in all likelihood, we are all in that camp. That we've moved to that realm, and you can see how that is on one hand plainly true, and on the other hand, desperately alarming. For the people who don't find it alarming, I think are being a little naive, uh, because certainly technology is something we have to use. Certainly, we have to move to virtual spaces, but we need to understand that there are consequences to the setup of these technological systems. They are designed to process us in a certain way too, and as such, there are certain thoughts that are possible within them and certain thoughts that are impossible within them too. It's naive for us to think otherwise, that we aren't also being manipulated by the media itself, by the setup of it. Um, Many of these articles, by the way, that we've read are pre-2016. And after the election in 2016, and after all of the scrutiny that's come on Facebook, on the role of even foreign governments being able to astroturf or try to spread disinformation, the role that political parties can play in that, it's incredibly naive for us to think anymore that just wandering into a virtual space means taking the culture that we had in physical space and transferring it into a virtual setting. So if it is true that there is a difference, that there is a manipulation, what kind is it? Well, the answer is it kind of depends where you are in virtual space. In many ways, while there's a panoply of ways of being physically, and there's so many different cultures on Earth that have figured out different ways of being together and different ways of doing things, that is magnified online. For instance, there are websites that are huge on preserving anonymity. So your anonymity either is absolute, everybody is anonymous, or it's partial. It's you're assigned a name, but that name is not your name in real life, or it's at zero. It's you're given a face. We see your face. The things you say are plainly coming from you. Um, and each of those things has a different dynamic that goes with it. You'll say different things if you're willing to be, if you know that you're not going to have the rest of your life attached to that. Uh, and you'll also say a bunch of different things if you know that your face is attached to that. And it's not necessarily so one-to-one either. I've seen a lot of things online where a person becomes far more angry and far more toxic when they know exactly who they're talking to, when the face is associated and when the entire personality is around it. It's not just like that goes away. There's so much study to be done in this, and there's so much, and that's just one tiny facet of how our lives play out online. There's a million other things to look at. There is addiction as it relates to our online lives. There's the idea of extremism, and where does moderation fit into this? There's the idea of the loudest voice. There's questions of capital and attention. This is something that requires so much more study, and probably it requires that we work double time on it, quite frankly, because if we're going to have a presence online and if we're going to walk into that milieu, we can't do it understanding nothing about it and thinking that it's entirely possible for us just to do things like before in a totally new setting. This is one of the reasons, by the way, why even as we are probably months away, maybe more than months away from celebrating Holy Eucharist together, I do not feel comfortable stepping in the interim there and saying that we can do something virtual that implies we have the same presence together, that is the same stand-in for Holy Communion. I That study needs to be done first, and all of the systems that we have set up to keep the table holy and to really allow people to experience a transcendental, mystical moment. Uh, uh, we don't know how to do that online yet. We just don't. And until we study those things properly and come up with some answers as a culture, I believe that is still a sacrament that has to take place in physical reality. And changing my mind on that one is going to be probably a longer process. Anyway, stay safe if you're watching this still in the time of COVID-19. If this is a historical anachronism of a video in not too long, then I hope that it will at least be interesting. God bless all of you, and God bless this time that the earth has rested from us, and God bless the future where we can gather together. And all the more, God bless the abundant life that will be once the veil is pierced and once our presence, which is always mediated by something that is not holy, is torn asunder and we are brought into the glorious light of heaven's glory and are made new around the table. Amen. Okay. Thanks, guys.